that the private sector should play a role down to perhaps 70% LTV, loan-to-value ratio, and the public sector should scale back the guarantee for qualifying Fannie Freddie type loans from 80% loan-to-value guarantees to 70%. And that can be the first stop along the path to continuing to scale down the public sector role and increase the role of the private sector. And the reason why the private sector should play a larger role is because to date the taxpayers have borne a heavy amount of losses that were incurred by Fannie and Freddie as a result of the guarantees. And I believe the 80% loan-to-value level where recently the government level, the public sector support level, guarantee level stood, exposes taxpayers to a routine loss as opposed to a catastrophic loss. And I believe the taxpayers should be exposed to only a catastrophic, very low probability loss, if any loss at all.
But I think that the private sector can really reduce a lot of the risk to the taxpayer. And that's why private mortgage insurance, we believe, is such an important part of that, because we're able to take that first slice of risk after the borrower's equity and really pay claims when someone defaults on their loan and goes to foreclosure. And we think that's a good way of using private capital effectively to allow borrowers to still buy homes with low down payments, but yet to still have the system insulated.
The private sector really ought to be the moving factor here. The private sector should provide most of the funds for recovery in housing. That's what we at the American Enterprise Institute have advocated for a long time. There is a role for the public sector, and that is to, as a social policy, to assist people who have been unable otherwise to meet the standards of providing down payments and having good credit scores and that sort of thing. But that has to be limited in some way so that we keep control over the risks that the taxpayers are taking.
The public sector and the private sector need to be shoulder to shoulder on the issue and work together. We've seen much more progress together than apart, and we see more us-them apart. So bringing the country together on this issue needs to be shoulder to shoulder, a very joint effort.
Well, clearly there has to be more of a balance than there is today between the two sectors. There's plenty of private market capital that is willing to invest in the mortgage market, so I don't think the issue is a lack of willingness. That's what happened in the crisis. But with the willingness there, a better balance, the government sector should provide emergency liquidity, as it did. That's an important role, as well as the concept of standards and functional operational standards, as well as mortgage product standards to help create efficiencies within the markets. Not that it would be the one that necessarily does it, but plays the role of creating them for all, both the private sector and government sector segments. And then from there, allow the private sector to do what it does best, which is innovate. I know that can be considered a bad term, but the reality is we do want financial innovation done safely and prudently and advance the marketplace and provide loans, affordable loans to people who are capable of living in homes.